Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you, and I hope that your brain is still in a functional state, given how challenging this wildcard was, and I imagine many of you are on that. So in this video, I shall have for you my finalized wildcard draft, and the reason it is in quotation marks on that slide is for a reason that I shall discuss. And then I will also look at captaincy, because I think it's so important and probably under-discussed this week, given the wildcard frenzy, and then also Palace assets, Villa assets, Newcastle assets, and Manchester City assets as well. If you do enjoy, drop a like on the video and make sure to subscribe. Again, we have hit 7,000 subscribers, so thank you very much for that. And the reason this video is late is because I just had to get the wildcard draft finalized before producing the video. I didn't want to be like, oh, I'll do this, and this. There's one potential switch I can make on my draft, which we will discuss, but other than that, it should be locked. So let's get into it, because time is very much of the essence. Right, so this is what I've landed on, and as you can see, there have been some significant changes since yesterday's video. Firstly, we'll speak about it as a whole, because every single part affects another. The changes in particular are Asensio has left, and Morgan Rogers has come in his place. Phil Foden has entered the field of play for Justin Kluivert. Konsa's come in for Kilman. Burns come in for Todibo. And Areola's come in for Martinez, I think. So why? Why have I done all of these things? Well, a major part of my team, which makes it a little bit different to others, is my, bullishness on Anthony Gordon and the fact that I would really like him in my team. I do genuinely think from 31 to 32, those three fixtures, I can outscore Jacob Murphy by 20 points. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but I think it actually could happen. Realistically, it's like one haul from Gordon, right, in one of those three games, and then a goal in the other. And I think he's got that in the bag. I think he's got some catching up to do in terms of output as well. And I'm hoping he does that as such. And I really do think with the Leicester fixture, that's certainly there for the taking. And we'll come on to Murphy and why I think like the games in 32, whilst I don't think they're great for Gordon, I do think it's going to be hard for Murphy to score in that. It's a niche with a little bit of analysis, but we'll come on to that. So I'm willing to make sacrifices elsewhere to facilitate Gordon. Now, as you can see, there is no Bukayo Saka in this draft, and we will touch on that in a little bit. But to ensure that I had a route to him, and a fairly easy route to him, I thought it better to go with Areola and Konsa instead of Kilman and Martinez and save the 0.7 that lies in that switch. Now, Martinez and Kilman is preferable because I prefer having the attacking threat of Kilman from set pieces for bench boost 33. Structurally, it's better for myself in terms of going forward because I'll gain an extra fixture in 37 as well. And that's the main thing. That is the main thing. The other, I guess you could argue that Martinez maybe has a higher ceiling, given it's like Newcastle at home, Manchester City away, and the double will also involve like Spurs and Bournemouth, which are all fixtures where he could get a lot of save points. But something just kept going in the back of my head, not so much just about the price or the money that I'm saving, but also the fact that Konsa could score a header. I feel like he might be G1. He could have had one in the cup as well. For those reasons, that has been made. And like I said, they all link together, right? So for example, this helps with upgrading Saka, but then also it helps with facilitating Gordon and vice versa. Rogers comes in for Asensio because I am not prepared to take that expected minutes gamble when I'm going to have to make transfers in 33, which you can see on screen. And I save 0.6 there. And that 0.6 for me is very useful. Why? Because if the Phil Foden experiment fails, it is the easiest route to go Foden to Saka in 33. I'll have the funds to do that, almost definitely. So, and then with the other two transfers, I'll be able to take out Burn, who's definitely leaving in 33, probably for Todibo or Kilman, whichever. And then I'll either go Isak to Watkins or Gordon to Rashford, depending on which Villa asset I would like. But as we will come on to in the Aston Villa assets section, I like them for that double. Like Newcastle away, City at home. As long as they're like fresh enough and they don't seem super fatigued from the intense schedule that they have. With more depth, I think they'll rotate against Southampton. And I'll show what I mean by that. I am really hoping that Villa do quite well in 33 and I can cash in on that. So those are the reasons why all of those guys are in. But what about Phil Foden? Now, I think it was game week 9 where I had pretty much the exact same decision, except it was the flip side. But I'm going to wildcard this time, right? So I can start with either. I had Saka. He was injured for the game at Bournemouth. And then I went to Phil Foden. And I had a really strong feeling that I shouldn't do it. And anyway, it ended up punishing me. And this just feels like a very similar case. Saka's coming back from injury. Foden's not in the best of form. City aren't in the best of form. But City have better fixtures than Arsenal do, right? In the next 3. And it feels like the exact same thing again. At the moment, I've got Phil Foden. But if anything's going to change in this team, it probably will just be Foden to Saka in one move. I don't think I'll do it. I think I'll stick with Foden. But that is the one move that I'm saying that could be different by the time you see my team in transfer plans. So that's that. And then in terms of bench boost 33, I should have a very strong team. So Burn goes to Debo or Kilman, let's just say. And that's a lock, right? So my bench boost will consist of Areola and another West Ham defender. So that's double West Ham defense at home to Southampton. Good. Ponsa as well. He will almost certainly be on the bench. So at least I have a doubling defender. And then I will either go Salah to Saka and then Gordon Sashisha to Rashford and Watkins. Now, I know many of you will hate that, but I simply don't have another route to Saka whilst keeping Foden as well, right? This is on the assumption that Foden plays well and I don't want to sell him. Or if Foden's also playing well, I spoke about the Foden to if he's not playing well when I said move him to Saka directly. The other alternative to if he's playing well is just to go Gordon to Saka and then move Isak down to Wood, have one less doubler, and then don't commit on the Aston Villa attack. The thing is, they're quite useful if they double in 36 as well, right? It will save me a transfer there. And like I said, I just feel good about it. So in an ideal world, I think I would like to sell Salah and just hope he doesn't do that well in 33. I'm not too bothered about not having him after that. For example, like 35, yeah, it's preferable. 34, I'll free hit anyway. But 36, he has Arsenal, and then 37, 38. 38 in particular, the team's so strong that I'm not too fussed about not having him. So that's where I'm at with this currently. And yeah, that's probably going to be the wildcard. Naturally, I imagine many of you will have certain things you don't like about it, but I guess that's what happens in wildcard week, right? So yeah, that should be the finalized team. Maybe Saka for Foden, but that's the only other thing. One thing I did forget to mention is why I've got Dan Burn back, because he wasn't in the squad yesterday. And in terms of the rest of the players, I like Mateta, Isaac Marmouche, like Raya, Gabriel, that's all self-explanatory. And I've gone through that previously, right? So I thought no need to touch on it again. And I've got a section for each of those doubling teams that I said in the introduction. We'll start with Dan Burn and the other move I was considering. The reason I've got Dan Burn is, even though he cost me an extra transfer, I do think he can outscore Guardiola by 4 points in game week 32. And as such, I'm like, okay, fine. If he outscores him by 4 points and I have to use a transfer, at least I'll make a profit. And I'm not like super bullish on it, but I am aware of the possibility that there's a decent ceiling attached to him in 32. And I guess maybe I'll play him in 31 as well, right? We'll just kind of see where things land. And as such, that will be the team. I do think Konsa might be rotated in 32 as well, which would mean I'd have to field Guardiola if I didn't have Dan Burn, because West Ham have Liverpool, and I'm not going to field like Kilman or Tadibo in that case. So that's why. The other thing I was considering, right, is selling Salah and going for Palmer. Now, you might be considering, like, you might be saying, why? Why would I do that? One, obviously the prospect of him outscoring Salah, but more so, that bit of cash would allow me to do Gordon to Saka straight in 33. And what it would mean is going forward and on the bench boost, instead of having Gordon, right? Let's just say, for example, like the route that I take is Salah to Saka, and then I sell Isak to Watkins because that is my preference. I will have to bench boost Gordon and then keep him thereafter. Whereas if I start with Palmer, because it'll take one less transfer, and I'll be therefore less inclined to do it if I had to use an additional transfer, I can just go Gordon to Saka, go Isak to Watkins, and then have like an extra premium asset. Naturally, that would mean I wouldn't have Salah for this period, but it also means that I would have Palmer over Gordon for the following weeks after. And that is a really interesting prospect. That could change as well, but I doubt it does. I think I pretty much set my mind on keeping Salah and just biting the bullet on Bukayo Saka for the next few weeks, and then whatever happens there, happens there. And I've already made my peace with selling Salah in 33, even though he's away to Leicester. If I have to do that, I shall. Right, now, if that wasn't challenging enough, now we move to captaincy. And as I say that, unless you have strong conviction or like a particular footballing insight, which you think gives you an edge, I think this will be one of the most luck-based captaincies that we will have this season. Because look at the number of options, like genuine options. Salah, Palmer, Isak, Foden, Mateta, Marmouche, Evanison, Eze, Sarr, and I've put Rashford in brackets for a reason I shall discuss. I could genuinely critique every single one of those to a fairly decent extent, right? At least in relative terms. And that kind of just shows that there's no like super standout option. I know a lot of people would like Salah, albeit I don't think it's such a bad week to take him on. And I could genuinely spend an hour on this topic alone, but we don't have an hour. So what I thought I would do is just quickly go through each of them and just give my like general opinion on them without going into too much depth. And then you can kind of take that and hopefully it helps in your application, your thought process. And I'll give you where I'm at the moment as well. For Salah, I mean, there's a lot going for him, right? Probably the best team in the league this season. No, the best team in the league this season. The best player in the league this season. He's at home. He's in such good form in the Premier League, albeit 2 poor games against Newcastle in the Champions League. And he doesn't have a great game in the Carabao Cup final. And the reason that is of particular relevance to me is there was no Trent there. And that hurt them in terms of their right-hand side dynamics. And there will be no Trent again. And with what Everton posed, it won't be the exact same as Newcastle, because I think it'll be 5-4-1 or like 5-3-2 or 5-3 as opposed to like 4-5-1, which Newcastle employed. But like it'll still be difficult to break down. It'll be something somewhat similar, I think, to what Man United looked to do when they went to Anfield and had success with against Salah, right? So for all those reasons, I could see potentially the ceiling being a bit capped. And where others have so many good fixtures like Palace and City, I think it's not such a bad opportunity to bet against. Naturally, Salah, so like if you want to go there, I don't think anyone can say it's a bad play. Also, you'll like cover yourself in terms of EO. But if you do fancy taking on some risk for, I would say, disproportionate reward this time around, because I don't think Salah's ceiling will be quite as high as normal without Trent, and how that impacts things, I think it's okay. Palmer, 1, he's back from injury, and 2, like, yeah, the thing is Jackson and Madueke are back, which is, I think, really helpful for him. But we've been out of sorts for a while now. And it's just like Spurs have had a break as well. And maybe they just needed that. They've got a lot of their players back. So are we just going to go and blitz them straight away? I'm not entirely sure. So I think you could. And like there's a high ceiling, obviously 18 points in the reverse fixture. Albeit like he didn't play like particularly well. He's got 2 penalties and a fortunate assist. I do think like, however, there's some upside. But I personally wouldn't. I just think a little bit too much risk associated. He's coming back from injury. You don't have a press conference, even though I think he'll be fine. And the fact that the form isn't really there. Isak, I have no quarrels with, really. Brentford are obviously a good team, but he is, in my opinion, be the best striker in the Premier League this season. I think you can make a very good case that he's been the best striker in the world this season. And as such, like I have literally no quarrels with going with Alexander Isak. I'll talk about Foden and Marmoush together. They should put Leicester to the sword. And the thing with Foden is, and we'll discuss this, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays like false 9, because I think Marmoush is better functioning as a second striker. And we saw this against Liverpool as well, right? He was willing to do this when Haaland was out. And I think for both of them, honestly, that could be quite good in terms of goals. But even if Marmoush is to function as the focal point, he's still got a good chance of scoring against this Leicester side. And I think Foden in the middle, where he has to take more responsibility for goal scoring now, that'll actually do him quite well, at least in terms of FPL. I think you see his shot volume go up like it used to be in the past. One thing I've actually noticed with him is not taking these pop shots or the shots from like the right half space or the central zones as much as he was when he is in good form. And I think the fact that he has to take more responsibility now may force him into that, may force him into form. And he's got such a high ceiling at home to Leicester. So that's something to consider as well. Albeit the downsides are, 1, you can't necessarily like 100% expect City to blow Leicester away. Whilst they should, they're so out of form at the moment. Not just in terms of like results, but also like their attacking dynamics for me have been a bit suboptimal. Albeit I don't think Bernardo will play, so that will help. And the other thing, he himself isn't in great form. I've read some reports about him not doing so well mentally and physically, so you can factor that in as well. Marmoush, I really like it. The only thing is like, 1, again, I think he's better as a second striker as opposed to 9. So where does he play? And then the second thing is, if he does play as a 9, like how does he do? He should do all right. Right? It's Manchester City, it's him. Like he still has Doku and Savinho either side of him. So I think he'll be okay. But he is a forward. So like, in terms of Salah's floor is so much higher, and Marmoush's ceiling is limited in comparison to him. And unless he gets like 3 returns / Salah blanks, or only picks up an assist and Marmoush hauls. That's something to consider. Mateta would be, I'd say, a front runner if it wasn't for the fact that you think he'll get subbed around like 80 minutes, and the fact that like I'm still putting weight on the fact that like I think subconsciously at least his body isn't like 100% there. Naturally so, right, after an injury like that. So if you are going to go for Palace, I prefer going for one of the mids and betting on them, and we'll come to them in a second. Evanescence, just because he's got such a good fixture, I think Clivert might miss the game following what Iraola said. The worst punt in the world. And then Eze and Sarr. I actually quite like these guys as options. I think that they should, again, similar to Manchester City, put Southampton to the sword. These two look in really, really, really good form. Eze's getting like his swagger back a little bit, and we'll speak about this in the Crystal Palace section. But if you did fancy some asymmetric upside, where I don't think the risk is so high because I think the floors are pretty decent for these two, especially Eze, like just to get one return, even if it be an assist, I like it. Rashford I just put because I think it's a good matchup. He's in good form, obviously coming off a brace, but also good performances beforehand. And like he is a superstar, so like when he gets going, he can basically take anyone on his day. And as such, like the ceiling's still there with him, right? I don't mind it too much, albeit I probably wouldn't. And yeah, that's about it. I think at the moment, like I'm not going to captain Salah, and I'll take that risk on, albeit it doesn't feel so good saying that. And I think I'll toss it up between Sarr, Foden, and Marmoush for myself personally. Maybe Isak as well. I do think in the end I'll land on Marmoush though, just because I can see him getting 2 returns at home to Leicester. He'll be on penalties as well. He'll be on free kicks because he is a dead ball specialist. Might even have some corners. I'm not too sure. And as such, yeah, I feel comfortable with his floor for this particular game. Not necessarily in comparison to Salah, but just him in isolation. And hopefully he gets 2 returns. And if so, like maybe just Salah does. As long as Salah doesn't score, which is a lot that I'm asking for this season, it'll be a decent gain there. So I probably go Omar Marmoush. But this is one thing that I cannot confirm before the deadline. I'll put, before the video ends, I will put a post out when I do have that finalized on YouTube, and I'll do it on X as well. So that's something to look out for. Right, now time is very much of the essence. So I feel like I should get through all of this quickly because those two are the main 2 talking points. In terms of Palace, we'll start with Eze versus Sarr. I think his instinctual nature to get into these goal-scoring positions is just better than Eze. And that could be somewhat resultant of the roles they play. So he just has like the freedom to be in those positions more so than Eze. That's like, this is more of a facade. But for me, in general, having watched him for a while, I think Eze like has a tendency to sometimes fall into these deeper spaces, whereas Sarr like likes to occupy the front line a lot more. Like I've seen him a lot of the times like in the same line height as Mateta, and I think that is quite beneficial for him scoring goals. Not to mention he's more of the runner type, and with the games coming up, Brighton, City, Newcastle, Arsenal, Bournemouth, all types of games where you'll have transitions. Now, don't get me wrong, like Arsenal probably limit them quite well, but they'll still be there. And the game I reference is Arsenal, Aston Villa. Like, yeah, Arsenal can limit them, but when you have quality in the form of like Watkins, for example, they'll be there and they'll be on offer. And I think Sarr can hurt them, right? He's a good player. Like, he's a really, really good player. I think he's honestly gone under the radar a little bit in terms of his quality. I think people have looked at his output, but I think his quality is a little bit underrated. So for those reasons, I'm going with him and he's my preference. However, Eze this season, I think, Eze's had a season whereby I think resultant of it, he's been slightly underappreciated now. Look, like I said, from a positional, that's like strictly footballing standpoint, in the sense that like he'll pull deep into left half space, he won't be on the end of those transitions, almost like a Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga dynamic. Yeah, that's not great. But Glasner's referenced quite a few times that he's had a strange season. Obviously, the injuries hasn't helped, and he just hasn't been able to get into that rhythm. But now he finally looks a bit more like the Eze we know, got a bit of that swagger back, and as such, I really do think he could put up some points, even if he's not, like from a footballing standpoint, got the best conditions. He's got so much quality. Just look at the goal against Fulham. Look at the assist he gets as well for Sarr. To haul in that type of way, just leveraging quality. Similar to like how Saka does, right? Because his conditions to haul are pretty rubbish, like every game. Sometimes touchline shifts, gets like 2-on-1, 3-on-1, like so regularly. But he's so good that he produces that. And I think Eze can do something of the sort. When I picked Foden for his like run of like points, one thing I mentioned beforehand is the fact that I thought he was present in the game, and that was reflecting the sharpness of his actions. I think Eze's got that now as well. So, if he comes good, I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised. Munoz, for me, the reason I have to have him is I think in any game, given Palace's form, given they're in such good form, and I would say they're getting a little bit lucky at the moment as well, which every side kind of does when they win. I'll give you an example, right? Fulham lose 3-0. Fulham had quite a few chances to score, and another day they score and take one of their early chances. And that's happened a few times with Palace. Like, for example, I think about their 4-1 game, right, against Villa, and like 2 disallowed goals. Now I know offside is offside, but sometimes they're marginal, and there were like other chances there. So I think they're getting a little bit lucky. And when you're getting a little bit lucky like that, it's easy to keep clean sheets. And if they keep a clean sheet, and Munoz gets an attacking return. And for him to get an attacking return isn't unlikely in any game, right? Whether it be a goal or assist, you're looking at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. And with the lack of good defensive options elsewhere, with the price being so cheap for what's on offer, I just think it's a slam dunk. I just think you have to take it. Like I say that, I would choose your battles. If you want to take him on, like, how are you expecting to beat him by like any considerable margin? I think it's very tough. Whereas I think in terms of your downside, it's huge because he gets one like 15-pointer. You're so far behind the 8 ball, so far, given the defensive options on offer. Mateta, part of me like would like to go for Sar and Eze just because I feel so secure with them. His injury is my only concern, mainly. I hope he comes good, and I hope it's not a big deal, but it is something to ponder if you are considering swaying. Structurally, however, he works much better than going double Palace mid. So for me, I shall be going for Mateta. Albeit, if someone was to go Eze, Sar, Munoz, I don't think anyone can really say it's a bad decision, or at least not in my opinion. Continuing to skate through this, I don't think Vardio is what he once was in FPL. One, because maybe he even plays centre backs and has some minutes there. But two, even at left back, given the system that they're using at the moment, I don't think like necessarily he's going to get those attacking returns from open play. One dynamic that I could see is like something similar to what they did at Wolves away in like the first half of the season, where like they had Doku on the left hand side and Vardio supported with like not just overlaps, but honestly like a lot more underlaps, which I think were quite useful. He actually scored that game as well. Scored a banger from outside the box. Very happy to receive as an owner. So if you do think there's a continuation of like him playing in the system and this role where the attacking returns are somewhat limited, I don't mind like going elsewhere if you need this, if you need the cash and you think this is simply the best place to take it from. The thing is though, like he's got that piece threat. So like over an 8-game period, 9-game period, whatever's left, there's goals, right? There are goals. And that is something I would consider if you're to go against, because Diaz is only 0.6 less and with pretty much 0 attacking threat, albeit like he likes a goal in the double, right? Remember the John Stones game week? I think like maybe if that 0.6 is so important to you there, this could be a sacrifice. Kuzanov would have been ideal, but with Nico O'Reilly's like cameo at left back, and then maybe like Guardian and Diaz play together, because he's not going to drop Ruben Diaz, especially like if you can move Ruben Diaz into right centre back, that would be his ideal thing anyway. That's just the thing with Kusanov's expected minutes, right? And also like let's just say Foden or Savinho or Doku catch fire and you want one of them, well all of a sudden you block yourself, and I'm not sure how smart that is. So for me, I'd still go Guardiola, but like I think there's a conversation to be had. As I say that, for all of Savinho's talent, he got 1 goal all season, and that too was like a half tap-in, and it was just a mistake from the keeper in the Leicester game. And I just want my players to have those high ceilings so that like they can have 5 bad games, but if they have 1 good game, you can kind of get bailed out. 5 is a bit, maybe 3, right? So for me, whilst he sits threats there, whilst he's playing well, I'm still not going to go there purely for the ceiling and the lack of goal threat. Doku, on the other hand, I think is far more goal threat. I wouldn't be surprised if he started to haul, but I think his expected minutes are more questionable, with the capacity for Grealish to start a game on the left, and then also like Pep to do these like false winger type of things and have more like players inside, like use Guardiola to provide the width on the left, whereas Nunez probably wouldn't do that in the same fashion on the right. And if Rico Lewis plays, he pretty much works, right? And like Savinho will give you something different to what Doku does. Like, yeah, Doku gives you that 1v1 threat, but like Savinho's got that creative like capacity, which especially without De Bruyne, you kind of need. So that's that. That's my like overall analysis of that. I actually don't mind either of them. I'm just not like over the moon with either of them. And then Phil Foden, and this will be one of the biggest points, I think, turning points of the season. I think some people will go here, some people won't. It'll be a decent split. You get it right, there's a lot of points on offer. With that double on 33, I think stylistically, I like it a lot. The Leicester fixture, and I think he could hurt United, and maybe even Palace if he's in good form as well, right? And he's got such a high ceiling, like, and people won't necessarily be able to get there next week or the week after. Maybe they'll have to wait for 33, or they won't be able to get there at all unless they perform some somewhat major surgery and have Saka at the same time. Great. But if he goes bust, and like, for example, my position, Saka starts flying, he goes up in value, and so on and so on. Right? Not great. So this is going to be a swingy one. I really do think it'll be a swingy one. Without Haaland, like I said earlier, I think he could play false 9 at times. And I guess that'll be good for his output. Or at least it'll be good for his output with Marmoush combined, as opposed to like Marmoush 9, Foden 8. I'm not saying that won't work. I'm just saying that like false 9 could work. I also think in terms of expected minutes, they'll actually be quite good because with Marmoush playing at 9, you don't have a runner from the middle, and no one else, I don't think, will play false 9 aside from Phil Foden, right? And that means that like, the 2 8s will only have this be spots for Bernardo, De Bruyne, and Foden. But there will be certain games where he just doesn't play. And then I guess you could push like Kovacic or Gundo into that left 8. But when you do, then you'll never have Bernardo in the 8 as well because you'll need one of the more attacking ones, right? So in that situation, I don't actually think Bernardo like is super necessary in all the games, even though Pep likes to play him a bit more than I would like. So his only real competition is De Bruyne, right? But De Bruyne hasn't really got the legs at the moment to play very regularly. So maybe Foden misses one. But I think if he does, like maybe he misses like either Everton or Palace, and you can kind of just hope it's Palace. And yeah, but honestly, I could see him starting all the games, especially if he gets in good form, because they kind of need him at this point. I actually don't know how many games KDB is going to play from now, at least until the end of Game Week 33, because I think about the game, for example, like against Leicester, he just played 90 in the Cup, probably won't play. Palace, in terms of the transitions, do you really want him? Probably not. Could play Everton, hence why I brought it up. But Villa transitions, nah, not really, especially with the midfield that they have. And then Man United, maybe, but like I just think that game could turn quite physical, so I probably won't play him in that one either. Depends on United's approach and how Pep interprets it. But like at least like this game and the Palace game, I don't think he'll play. So yeah, I think Foden should be good for minutes just because like in that 9 and attacking 8 role, not too many others to take it, especially if Marmoush continue playing as a second striker. Aston Villa assets. Now I haven't seen too many of them on a wildcard, especially in terms of their attacking assets. I do, however, think they are slightly overlooked. What I aimed to do was a very, very, very challenging task and predict the front four for the next, 8, 9 games in a row, just to kind of like show you where the expected minutes could be at. One thing you will see very present on the right-hand side is there is a lot of Morgan Rogers, hence why I've selected him. I personally don't think that Jacob Ramsey is going to get as many minutes as he has done in other parts of the season, just given what Rashford offers you. So I'll discuss it quickly. Brighton, is very difficult to drop Rashford after a brace. And in that type of game, with Rashford's threat in behind and that transitional threat, you're going to kind of want him. And Watkins is definitely playing after being on the bench against Preston. Rogers is Rogers. And then like Asensio, okay, if he doesn't play in the middle, it'll be McGinn anyway, right? And then they'll just play like Kamara and Tielemans as the pivot. So that's that. Then against Forest, I think it's just a really smart game to rest Rashford. He won't have too much space in behind. There won't be so many transitions. It won't suit him as much. You can give Ramsey a game. You can rest Rashford. And then the other 3, I think, play. Against PSG, I think he'll go for a more defensive team. So, like, especially in the first leg away at the Parc des Princes. So, I think Asensio drops out for McGinn and they play McGinn, Tielemans, Kanana, like a Kamara, and then maybe a Nana, and maybe Tielemans in that McGinn spot. But regardless, I don't think Asensio plays. And then, like, that is the like Rashford bread and butter game, right? In a game as chaotic as that, to not play him would be, in my opinion, crazy. And Watkins will play as well. And Rogers is just Rogers, right? Ever present. Southampton, therefore, is the game that you rotate, considering these guys, especially Watkins and Rogers, play 3 on the trot, and in Rogers' case, 4. You go Marlon, Ramsey, Asensio, +1. I don't know who. I even thought like he could play Marlon up top, Asensio off the right, Ramsey in the middle, and then like Maatsen on the left, but like a bit of a stretch, right? But that's what I think he'll be. Who knows? Maybe like one of Watkins, Rashford, or Rogers plays. Then in the second leg at home, if you assume that they're down by the time they get to the first leg, I think he'll play that front 4, right, with Asensio instead of McGinn. But maybe Asensio doesn't start. And then Newcastle, right? Rogers and Watkins should play again because their break will be Southampton. And I think you'll need that threat of Rashford on the left. And honestly, with all due respect, and I really rate Jacob Ramsey, I just think Rashford's a better player. And a similar like line of thinking to the City game. The reason I have Ramsey in question marks is I won't be surprised if Watkins maybe doesn't play one and Rashford plays top for one of them. Or like Ramsey starts one and then Rashford comes on the bench and then Rashford plays the rest of the other one, and then Watkins goes on the bench for like 30-40 minutes in the City game, something like that. But I just wanted to show you, just in case you were looking at them, that I personally think Rashford will get good minutes, but the risk is certainly there. Even one like start that I predicted not being a start in the form of Newcastle and City really hurt you. Hence why I've basically gone for Rodgers. And yeah, I think the reason they're also overlooked is because, one, not only is it double game week 33 and the fixtures I quite like from an attacking perspective, but also a potential 36, so you're setting yourself up for that. they've had a big issue going from Champions League to Premier League, but with increased squad depth, you can rotate, so you won't be as tired. Great. I think they've had an improvement overall as a team, not just because of the players that, okay, maybe it's predominantly because of the players that come in, but I also think like the system's working a little bit better, I guess, with how the players are interacting with it, and they're in decent form. I say decent because like they lost one game recently, but I think defensively they've looked a lot better, and that kind of sets the tone for everything else, if you wish to view it that way. So yeah, I do think this is something to ponder, at least, especially Morgan Rogers or Marcus Rashford. Finally, Newcastle Assets, which is probably much simpler. Isak is Isak. I'm not going into it. Like, if you want to go without him, by all means, it'd be a bold play. I don't think it's like a bad play, but I don't think it's a good play. I'm not even just saying that because, like, you know, you might have an edge over all of us in terms of how you're interpreting 32. But anyway, Burnley and Livramento for me both ahead of Trippier. 1, because of the price, and that's the main thing. 2, because he's somewhat injury prone, just in case of the fact that he gets injured again. 3, because Gordon has set pieces. And 4, because his open play threat is not the same as it once was. So that's that. Livramento and Burn are a lot cheaper. Personally, I prefer Burn. 0.1 cheaper and better goal threat for me from set pieces. So that's why I get him. And then it's just very much a case of like, if you've got Isak and you got Burn, obviously I know some people are going Pope. Personally don't like in terms of how that works, but that's another thing. And then it's just, is Gordon worth 2.4 million over Murphy? I think to have one of them makes a lot of sense because like Leicester away in 31 makes it a lot better. And then they have the double early, right? And then you get out of them. So I think that really helps. And then, yeah, it's Gordon worth 2.4 million over Murphy. And as I said in the wildcard draft, I just do genuinely think he could outscore him by like 20 points in the next 3 games, starting from 31 and ending in 32. Subjective, naturally. Yeah, I do. One thing about Murphy is if you look at the goals, I think they come in a very similar fashion where there's space and he can strike somewhat across it. Even if he like hits it in a way where it spins to his right, yeah, it'll always be his right, or he like cuts across it. I think it's always when he has space and he's like striking across his body. And I think against like United and Palace in those smaller spaces, you won't have them as much, especially in the zones that he's going to function. Especially like if Bruno's the one like pushing into like the half space more, and like Murphy's holding the width, and maybe Trippier underlaps a little bit as well and just like puts crosses in from that angle. Even if they rotate in that dynamic and Murphy moves into the half spaces, I don't think he'll be running on so much to get in those positions. Slightly niche point, but I do think that will be factor in him potentially not scoring in 32. 31, like, with all due respect to Leicester, like, anything could happen, right? There could be quite a few goals there. But I think I'd just take the rested Anthony Gordon for that. So, yeah, that's why I'm going for Gordon. And that's a wrap. That is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I know that one was quite rushed. I know it was quite quick. But as you can probably tell by the time the video is coming out, time is certainly of the essence. I decided to put 3 videos out instead of 2. I thought it was just important to update the draft and then go through the teams individually as well. Yeah, that's probably what I'll be on. Maybe Saka to Foden, maybe Salah to Palmer, but probably not, right? And I shall update you before the deadline. I wish you the very best of luck. It'll be a really, really interesting end to the season now with little changes at the moment that will sprout into bigger changes down the line. So I wish you the very best of luck, and I shall see you on the other side probably tomorrow for Transfer Plan. Good luck and goodbye.